Thank you for tuning in to an episode of InRange. I'm here to talk to you today and shoot a very historic gun. This would have started its life as an 1851 .36 caliber cap and ball revolver, and it has been converted in a cartridge conversion to the .38 Colt cartridge. Now, that's an interesting conversation in and of itself. Now, cartridge conversions like this became more and more common, and people used guns that they already owned, like they had an 1851 Navy, and they wanted to convert it to something cartridge to be more modern. We have other videos on the channel already where I showed that really you didn't need to do that unless you were really on the cutting edge, because the cap and ball revolvers of the time, if you knew how to use them properly, were very effective. But obviously cartridges bring lots of advantages. And cartridge conversions were ad hoc. Some of them were done by the factory, such as in the Richard Masons, but others were done very much by blacksmiths in the field, and therefore there's a wide variety of different types of cartridge conversions. One of each is sometimes not unique or completely unique to one another. And this is kind of one of those. Now, this is a modern reproduction. This was at some point an Italian 1851 Navy that someone had decided to have converted. And this one is different than a lot of the ones you see being made from someone like Uberti directly. It does have a conversion ring here. It has a shaved cylinder, which makes it short enough so that it can have the conversion ring. It does have a spring-loaded loading gate right there, so for ease of loading. And it has recessed chambers, which is very interesting in that you can actually seat the cartridge all the way flush with the actual cylinder. Someone did some scalloping of the cylinder, which makes it look a lot more modern, of course, and it has a firing pin embedded in the conversion ring, which was not unusual to cartridge conversions of the time, and historically is period correct. So if you were rechambering in 1851, which was 36, you would go with the standard cartridge conversion of the day, which would have been .38 Colt. Sometimes now referred to as .38 short Colt, but really that's not a thing. It was .38 Colt at the time. What happened is later there was a lengthened cartridge version called .38 long Colt, which was adopted by the military, and that's why you now have .38 short Colt, .38 long Colt. All of this ultimately turned into .38 special, and of course, even later on in history, the .357 Magnum. Now, the original .38 Colt had a heeled bullet. It actually was undersized in diameter, kind of like a Meunier ball, and during the expansion of gases, it would open up and engage the rifling. But then they later went to a .358 bullet, which then did not need that type of Meunier or expansion to catch the rifling, which then means that you can actually chamber .38 special and a .38 Colt and get away with it if the overall cartridge length is short enough that it will fit into a .38 Colt chamber, which is exactly what I'm doing today, because .38 Colt is kind of difficult to deal with. So today I'll be shooting .38 Special, but I'll be shooting at .38 Special wad cutters, and wad cutters have the actual projectile completely seated within the overall length of the brass cartridge case, which keeps it within the minimum overall length, or I should say under the maximum overall length of .38 Colt, which is what this gun was chambered for. So we are shooting a 1851 Navy that's been converted to cartridge, .38 Colt, but we're shooting .38 Special wad cutters in a .38 Colt 1851 cartridge conversion because it's easier to do so. So let's see how that goes.
Oh, okay. That was Arby. Oh, okay. What'd you do? Oh, okay.
What do you do in the barrel with right next to it? And if we tag out, there's a bunch of duck ponds not too far from there, so I always throw my duck ponds.
You'll notice there is no ejector rod on this, and that is very common for what I would call blacksmith conversions of the time. When you take it to your local gunsmith or blacksmith and say, I want this gun cartridge converted, a ejector rod was a very common thing to omit from that build, and you'll see that with lots of historic cartridge conversions. And I guess we have to read into what that is. Why they didn't see a need for that, I don't know. You have to carry out something with you to eject those spent cartridges. This is a period correct cleaning rod. But the idea of a speed reload with this was something that just wasn't even on the table. It wasn't on the radar. It wasn't something they even bothered considering. I'm carrying 6 here at the match because I can gently lower the hammer on the firing pin, which is then resting on a primer. I'm not going to drop the gun right then and there. But in the field, you would normally carry it with 5 rounds and an empty chamber with the hammer down on that empty chamber, just like you see with the single action Army Colt, etc. Until we saw the advent of like transfer bar safeties and such, which is certainly not something that's going to be in this kind of cartridge conversion. So we've got 2 more stages to go, but as it stands right now, this 1851 Colt cartridge conversion is doing very well here at the backup gun match. So let's talk a little bit about the differences between 38 Colt and 38 Special Wad Cutter. 38 Colt would be pretty much the same overall length as this cartridge, but a 38 Colt would have a normally styled crimped bullet. It would not be recessed into the cartridge like this 38 Special Wad Cutter is. 38 Colt would have a .358 diameter bullet in its later incarnations, powered by black powder, 129 grains, moving at around 800 feet per second, 775 feet per second. 38 Special here is actually a .357 bullet. It's a wad cutter. It's a 148 grain bullet recessed into the cartridge, and this is going a little faster at around 850 feet per second. So we're getting a little more oomph out of the 38 Special Wad Cutter, but a 38 Special Wad Cutter is essentially interchangeable with 38 Colt as long as the gun you're using is capable of handling smokeless powder. Now, you could, of course, load 38 Special black powder with wad cutters if you needed to, if you didn't want to deal with 38 Colt. But for the purposes of our experiment today of shooting this cartridge conversion, this 38 Special Wad Cutter is really darn close to the original 38 Colt chambering of this 1851 cartridge conversion. In the revolver division, I ended up taking first place. I don't know how many people were in revolver total. Of the two that I saw on my squad, they were using double action J-frames. So there might be some more, and we have the full results here. But still took first place with an 1851 cartridge conversion. And what that tells me, quite honestly, is that if you know what you're doing with a gun like this, you don't necessarily need double action. Double action has some benefits. I'm not saying you shouldn't have it. But if you were capable with a single action and you had more modern gear, such as a cartridge conversion like this, you really weren't leaving much on the table behind no matter what. The revolvers were pretty much figured out in the 1870s. And while there has been some modifications and improvements since then, like things like moon clips, speed loaders, swing out cylinders, the reality is these revolvers stuck around for a long time, and there's good reason. While there were better ones on the market, you didn't necessarily, as an individual, need something better, or at least didn't perceive the need for something better for your personal defense. And that's why you saw cartridge conversions, 1871s, and single action armies existing throughout the entire Old West, up until the 1930s and 40s even, for that matter, as considered a viable defense pistol. So, guys, I hope you enjoy watching this kind of content. I have a lot more Old West pistols coming to the channel, some real exciting ones like a Lamat and a Walker and others. And all of that is possible strictly because this channel is completely viewer supported by viewers like you. There's no AdSense, no monetization, no corporate overlords, no sponsors. This channel is completely funded by InRange viewers, and things like this gun, which was acquired through that possibility, the ammunition fired today, and the time to be able to film this and edit this for you is because of Patreon supporters. So I'd like to thank each and every one of you for doing that and for keeping this channel alive. If you'd like to consider it, you can find us at patreon.com/InRangeTV. If you can't, I do understand. Just subscribe to one of our multiple distribution points. We're all over the internet. We're not just on YouTube. You can find them all at InRange.tv/watch. And thanks, and share with your friends.